Hey guys, Chris here, the RC Geek. Welcome back. Guys who know me well know that I'm really particular when it comes to color and markings on my airplanes. I love scale, and I'm always trying to replicate what's exhibited on the full-size counterparts of the models that I build. Truthfully, it's kind of an obsession. I got cut once and actually started bleeding Federal Standard color chips, I thought. You probably did notice it, though, in our How to Refinish a Foam Warbird series in our paint video. You can see that series here. Since then, I've had some additional requests to talk more about making markings, and so this video provides a little more in-depth discussion of how to do that. I do plan to get much more specific when we get to painting our competition F4D Skyray project, but unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. So hopefully this discussion will provide you with some useful information on making your own markings. Now, if we're to the point of markings, then we've obviously chosen a paint scheme. Ideally, the paint scheme we've chosen is accompanied by a nice set of coloring diagrams. This is especially helpful for competition, but obviously it's not necessary. At the very least though, we have a picture and an idea of what the rest of the airplane looks like. My go-to for finding paint schemes and markings is to start by looking for plastic model decals. There's a huge assortment out there, and they usually always provide full documentation of the paint scheme, including coloring diagrams, so that's a great place to start. Also, if we have to draw the artwork from the ground up, which we often do, these provide a great starting point. My go-to site for checking this stuff is aircraftresourcecenter.com. It's an awesome site with tons of resources. I have a few other sites that I do check, which are linked in my blog article at thercgeek.com. So to make the artwork itself, this can be sourced from a number of places, but the medium of the marking, whether a decal or paint, will determine what type of file is required. For waterslide decals, a simple JPEG or similar image is all that's needed. The crux of it is that you need a high resolution file to ensure a print with crisp, clean lines. This usually means that you got to draw it yourself, but sometimes you can find what you need online through various searches. I'm sorry to say, crayon won't work. This is where plastic model decals really come in handy, as they are a great basis for making larger markings from. So to draw the markings, I like to use CorelDRAW, it's a vector line type program. This means that the images, once they're drawn, are fully scalable without any loss of resolution, which is a good thing. You can make them any size you want. Also, this allows you to use a vinyl cutter if you have a vinyl cutter available. I do have one and I love it. I use it all the time. Now, for most of my build projects, I typically use a combination of paint and decals to achieve what I need. You may have noticed that this is what we did during our Lady Alice P-51 transformation on some of the lettering and the stars and bars and whatnot. It is a common technique that I do like to use. It's also what I did on my jet hanger A7 for any markings I wasn't able to outright paint. Most of the markings are painted on the airplane, with the exception of the smaller detail markings like the mission camels, some of the other small lettering. The blue hawk on the tail is a combination of both paint and decal, which is a technique that we did also use on some of the lettering that we did on Lady Alice. Now, talking about decals versus paint masks, both certainly have their place. I generally try to paint most of my markings. They're painted on the full size. Why shouldn't they be painted on the model? However, sometimes on our models it's just not feasible to paint, and let's be honest, decals are usually just a simpler way to go. Now, the key to a quality homemade decal is having a high resolution artwork as well as the right decal paper. For decal papers, there's two types available: decal paper for inkjet printers and decal paper for laserjet printers. Now, which to use? Laser decal paper for the win. It's the only way to go to get a quality decal. The inkjet paper just isn't as robust. I've tried it multiple times and I've had mixed results, but the issue is, if you're using heavy base solvent clears, it's not going to hold up to that, because you have to use an acrylic clear coat to seal the decals before you can transfer them onto anything. Now, with the laserjet decal paper, you get very durable decals that are ready to apply immediately after printing. without any kind of a carrier clear coat. The inkjet stuff, yeah, not so much. Now, decal papers come in a clear and a white, which is a description of the color of the decal carrier film. For me, I always use the clear decal paper. The limitation with this is that we just can realistically only place dark decals over lighter colors because the decals are semi-translucent. You would think then that that's where the white paper would come in. Unfortunately, the white is just a pain to deal with. The reason is that even though you have the white carrier film, the decal will still take on some of the background color, I know from experience. And the bigger issue is that you have to cut perfectly around the decal so you don't have any white showing. Uncool. So this is why I start getting into using a combination of paint and decals so I can avoid the white altogether. In terms of decal paper sources, I generally just purchase it from decalpaper.com. Now for paint masks, I personally have a Roland SV12 vinyl cutter and I love it. I have a link in the comments to the cutter if you want to check that out. But to cut a mask simply requires a CAD or vector line drawing of the object to cut. Now this is where the use of Corel Draw to draw the artwork really comes in handy, as the files can be used directly for cutting. Now for the mask, I use a lower tack vinyl so that they don't want to permanently stick to the airframe. You definitely don't want that. Obviously, a vinyl cutter, is not a requirement. It's a great tool, but not always accessible. So paint masks can also be just as easily cut by hand with the right tools, or you can in fact outsource them. My dad, he still cuts his paint masks by hand. The same vinyl can be used for hand cutting, or you can use paint mask material from an art supply store. When cutting by hand, you can simply tack down a print of the pattern using some 3M77 spray glue, placing it onto the masking material. From there, you cut it out, and then having an assortment of sharp X-Acto blades, straight edges, circle templates, though, is a must if you're going to do that. Now with the masks cut, it's a matter of placing them onto the aircraft and painting appropriately. In some cases where multiple colors are necessary, multiple masks will need to be cut. For example, in the case of a star and bar, the whole outline would need to be cut to spray the white. Then the masks are placed to protect the white, which would be the center bars and the star, and then the blue would be sprayed. And then lastly, the red bars would be masked and painted in the white bars. Now, as we mentioned, paint doesn't work all the time, nor do decals based on the available tools when you're making your own. So when you start having to deal with light colored decals going over dark colors, to get around this, I use a combination of paint masks and decals. Also, for artwork needing to be a specific color to match other painted areas on the airplane, this method is ideal. Where this works best is for badges or insignias that have multiple colors. I've also used this method for multicolored lettering, also which is what we did on the Lady Alice text on our P-51 refinish. What we do here is we cut a paint mask that encompasses the complete outline of the marking, place the mask on the aircraft, and then paint that area white or whatever the necessary color is. From there, once the paint is dry and the paint mask removed, the badge insignia decal can then be placed over the painted area, which completes that marking. Also, in cases I need specific colors to match paint, I paint the area the necessary color and then place a decal of the detail markings. An example of this is the Blue Hawk on the tail of my jet hanger A7. The paint mask was placed and the area was painted white. I then masked any areas needing to stay white, which were the beak and the claw, as those areas were yellow in the decal. And then I painted the rest of the area blue. Everything else that you see, it was placed as a single decal. Unfortunately, there are just some cases where, given our available tools, we just can't achieve what we need. Now in this case, it's time to outsource. I had to outsource some markings on my Mirage because it is a dark airplane with light markings, and I just didn't have a way to physically make them with my tools. You win this time, dark paint! It was primarily an issue with the small detail lettering, since it was too small to cut and couldn't be done with a homemade decal. Now in terms of resources, I found getstencils.com to be pretty good. She provides dry transfers and paint masks, and is who I sourced for my Mirage masks and lettering dry transfers. Also, another option is Cali Graphics. She makes printed vinyl markings, but can also make paint masks on request. Now, I recently became aware of a process that uses a screen printing process for making stencils. So I will be exploring that in the future, and will definitely report the results back to you guys. I'm really excited to try it, and it's going to open up a whole new world for small detail lettering. Well, there you go. I'm sure I forgot something, but we will visit this again in more detail at a later date. I'll go through exactly what I do every step of the way when we get to this point on our Skyray. Now, you can get up to date on that project here. Until then, I hope this discussion has provided some good information for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe as I've got more in the works. Also, if you'd like to see what's happening in the shop real time, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Got it all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you at the field. Alright, we've got the airplane painted. We've got our coloring diagram. Let's see how we did. Nailed it!